If you're first like starting a company for the very first time, trying to find something that cash flows first, because a SaaS is like, even let's say you spend all this time building it, you spend time marketing, you have users coming on, whatever. If you're at like $500 in monthly recurring revenue, or even like 1,000 or 2,000 or something like this, this isn't really enough for most people to survive even, right? When it comes to like having a team or anything else and personal expenses and whatever. So I would think like, try and find something that can cash flow, even if it's a little bit first. Maybe it's like you do some consulting on the side or something.
Welcome, Dylan.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Really glad to have you here. Dylan runs an agency called Hey Digital, which is a marketing agency focused on PPC ads, right? Correct?
Yeah, like performance marketing and creative for SaaS companies. Yeah, so we've worked with, I think, 60, 70 different SaaS companies now, like Hotjar, Pitch, Stream, user testing, like a whole variety of some publicly traded companies, some early stage, like Series A, Series B SaaS companies.
And you're based in Estonia, and your company was actually, this year, was nominated the second fastest growing company in Estonia. A big award. Estonia, really big place, very important. You should put it on the front page.
It's kind of surprising how easy it is to win one of these awards, though, if I'm honest with you, because it's like, it's based on real numbers, which is great, because so many of these awards these days aren't based on this, right? It's like pay to enter, whereas this one it's based on real numbers, but they take it's all percentage based. So it's based on like the percentage that your revenues and profits have grown versus the previous like year or something like this. So not to like knock down the award, because it is good. Like, and there are certain criteria, like you have to have had the company for, I think it's like 2-3 years or something like this. And you have to be growing at a certain rate. But it's like,
I mean, yeah, a lot of the awards are just like, if you don't nominate yourself, then you're just not getting it.
Yeah, well, because when they emailed me saying we'd won this award or we'd come second or whatever. Yeah, well, because I actually replied and I said, well, that's great, but I'm not paying for it, right? And they were like, no, you don't have to pay for this award. Like, it's a real award. So I was super skeptical about these things.
Yeah, because there's so many of them, like certain creative awards in Estonia, ones that you have to nominate yourself basically, and then you have to pay a lot of money to win it, and it's all like prestigious, but it's like only people who actually care about it is like the people in there. Because like, okay, a creative agency wins an award, I don't care about that as a client, like never cared.
Yeah, I think
but
sometimes
everyone's always flexing them, like.
Yeah, and I think sometimes some awards can be good for your team, though. This is the other thing I've realized, because like our creative team, for example, one of them said the other day that, it'd be really cool to have some like awards for our work. And so actually I've then started to think about like, maybe we should buy some of these awards, you know?
Like the designers. The designers definitely put it on the resume that like, I won this, right?
Okay. Yeah, dude, I have some funny stories about awards, but I don't know if this is like entirely relevant for now. But also, anyone that runs an agency will know of Clutch, this website where it's kind of like a review platform for agencies, and they do awards every year. And one year they emailed us. This was when we were super early into our agency. They emailed us saying that we'd won like one of the fastest growing agency awards or something like this. And it turns out they do them not even based on the country, but on the region. So winning one of these for Estonia was like the easiest thing in the world, right? Because it wasn't even for like all of Estonia. It was like tech agencies in like Tallinn basically, or something like this. So there was like no competition, but I paid for the award because I was like, oh, this would be cool, we'll get an award, like this will be fun, I'll put it in the office. And I think it was maybe like 500-600 euros or something, and then it arrived to the office. I don't think I've shown this to you before actually, but it's like this glass award. I thought it was going to be like this, right? And it arrived and it was like the size of this mug kind of thing. And so after that I was like, we're never doing this, we're never going to buy one of these things again. Yeah.
Did you at least get a feature on the website or something?
No, you just get this award backlinks, and then like a little badge or something like this that no one cares about, right?
No backlink.
Yeah.
Does it even make sense to flex the award to your clients that you're the fastest growing company? Because in a sense, it feels like you're kind of telling them like, hey, we charge you a lot of money. We're the fastest growing company.
I think these awards don't really matter to anybody. I don't really see the purpose of them at all. It's
kind of like people looking at your university degree, if they want to figure out if to hire you or not. Maybe like certain crowds, certain situations, but otherwise like...
Yeah, I think awards are actually more so for like better for hiring. I think like you said, creatives, right? Are more sometimes interested in these things, but I don't think clients care about this because clients only care about the results that you get for them. And like, if you've proven that you've worked with other companies just like them, they don't care about awards.
And now you've kind of moved on, expanded your horizon beyond building the agency, and you lately just acquired your own first SaaS business, Post-Trips. So tell us about that, and like just the thought process that went into why did you want to now acquire a SaaS business while you're building a successful agency already?
So there are like a few different reasons. Basically, we've been running the agency for nearly 6 years now, I think, something like this. And from the very beginning, we had a focus of only working with SaaS companies. Just because of my personal experience and my background, it was like very easy transition to make and to brand of like, I worked for some big SaaS companies, for some small SaaS companies. So starting my own agency, working with SaaS companies was like super easy to then just have clients pretty quickly. And the whole time we'd always thought that, okay, we'll kind of like learn the ropes a little bit more behind what's successful for other like SaaS companies within their marketing, work with some really great SaaS companies, some early stage ones, some that turned out to be not so good, right? And like see the whole variety with the goal of one day building our own SaaS as well. Because the only reason I started an agency, if I'm honest, is because I didn't really know what else to start, right? It's like I knew I was going to run a business, and there was an opportunity that came up to me based on my personal network at the time and other things like this, where I had enough traction where I knew if I launch my own thing, I'll have customers. And so an agency just made the most sense based on my skill set. But I didn't wake up one day and was like, my dream is to run a marketing agency for SaaS companies,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Like, I know Andre and I, like personally, we've talked about this a few times around like how I feel about business, and actually not feeling like, I don't feel like you have to absolutely love everything that you do, but we could maybe talk about this later on.
No, let's talk about it. It's because in a sense, when you're building yourself up, when you're getting into business, when you're building your own brand and let's say the knowledge base and your network, then you certainly don't have to love the very first thing you do. It's like you get your nut, as they say in other podcasts. First you get your nut, and then you focus on your mission and things that you actually want to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I feel like sometimes when I look at some of our friends also who are running their own things too, I think sometimes the emotion when you're so attached to something can actually prohibit you from either growing or seeing success, because you get so attached to the decisions that you make.
Exactly. So perfectionist, and it's going to be a bias where you just don't pull the trigger when you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, if I want to work with one specific type of company because I really care about their mission or what they're working on, whatever, that's great at the point where you are working with them, because you can be really like driven with the work that you're doing for them. But just having passion alone often isn't enough to land those clients or start working with them. And if you're so focused on like, okay, my website needs to convey my passion for this industry like so clearly, and I spend like 3 weeks figuring that out when I could have just been like cold emailing 3,000 companies or something like this to get a deal. It's like, I don't know. I could talk about that for a long time, but back to the original question about like why the SaaS company.
Let's put a pin in the cold emails and outreach, because I want to come back to that definitely.
So on why the SaaS company, like we knew that, okay, if we spent 4 or 5 years running this agency, building up this experience of seeing how all of the best SaaS companies in the world operate their marketing, that would give us an advantage of running our own SaaS business. And then also, if we had a team internally that can do half of what running a SaaS company is, which is the marketing side of things, like this will help us out. And to be transparent, like the multiples that are available to you when selling an agency are significantly smaller than the multiples available to you when selling a SaaS business. Like,
what are the multiples for an agency?
So for an agency, what I found from conversations I had with people is like typically the multiplier in an agency is always based on your profit numbers, not your revenue numbers. This is one thing, because SaaS sales, like if you're going to sell a SaaS company, your valuation is based on a multiple of your ARR, not your profit numbers. Whereas with agencies and service businesses, most of the time it's based on your profit numbers. And at the kind of range where we're at as a business, so let's say they're like 1 to 5 million a year, you can't really expect any more than like 2.5 to, at a real stretch, like 3.5, 4x profit numbers. And so an agency can be a very good like cash flowing business, but an agency at that kind of size and even larger isn't really the kind of business that if you sell is going to significantly change your life overnight. Whereas a SaaS company, you can see like the variety in the multiple is huge, but it's also based on revenue and not profit, and that makes a huge difference. So I could sell an agency for a 3x multiple on profit, but I could sell a SaaS company maybe a if it's under 50K MRR for like 5-6x, average maybe 4x revenue. So it's like much more valuable. You know?
That is crazy, the multiples for SaaS business.
Yeah.
Just looking at some small things and then calculating the value, it's just like beyond me. But what are the numbers? Do you know what are the multiples for e-commerce businesses?
Depends a lot. Like if you have a brand, then you can also sell it for similar to SaaS, because they also have like subscription models. Like those ones are definitely higher value because that's kind of like a SaaS when you have like direct to consumer like products, but it's still more based on profit rather than revenue because the cost of goods is such a big part. Plus, like if you're paying a shit ton in ads, then the ad money might actually go into the profit as well, maybe 50% sometimes of the total product. And then you're still like left with maybe a multiple on the profit that is like maybe 5x, but the profits are so small.
Because that's what I'm just realizing now as well lately, after hearing about these multiples and looking into the numbers and calculating. Well, I gave my last e-commerce business away for free because I just wanted to get like rid of it and like move on. But I could have definitely perhaps charged something for it, you know, because it was a working thing and I had like, I think the revenue was at least 40-50 grand a year, if not more.
It depends how you get your customers as well. If it's like more passive, if it's more tied to the founder, like if it's your social following, like is the only thing driving it, then it's obviously going to be a lot less than when it's like all SEO.
Yeah. No, that one was word of mouth because it barely did any digital marketing at all. And people just saw it like it was like a water RO unit device. Like everyone in this room owns one kind of. And it was people just saw the thing, there was novelty, asked about it, and then other people wanted it because everyone liked talking about it as well. It's like this like a conversation piece.
You sold us all a great opportunity, right? This is
kind of like the Tesla of tap water.
Tesla of tap water.
Like once you buy it, you need to justify that you bought it. So you're going to show it to all your friends.
Yeah,
exactly. And then everyone needs to buy it.
So this was the thinking, like some of the thinking behind the SaaS company was, okay, we've done this for 4 or 5 years. We know that we can take these learnings, we can utilize the team that we have to successfully market a SaaS company. Another angle was the financial side of things too, is like I see a lot more upside in building and selling a SaaS company than I do building and selling an agency, for example. But then we kind of just wanted to experiment a little bit, if I'm honest with you, because I think the SaaS space in general, even the SaaS space has been around for a very, very long time, but I'm sure you guys have probably noticed too, the last like 1 to 2 years, everyone on like Twitter or other places that used to run their agencies for e-com businesses or for info products are now like swaying towards SaaS a lot more, which is kind of funny for me to see after being in the space for such a long time. But like I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to test around a little bit. Some of our clients that we work with might be a little bit more like, I don't mean boring, I don't mean it this way, but like might be scared to test or experiment with some things. And if we can test and experiment on it with our own product and then show them, hey, look, we did this for our own SaaS company and these are the results. It like there are so many different reasons why we could do something like this. And I think longer term, Poststrips, the SaaS company that we've just acquired and are working on now, I don't see this as being the company that I run for like the rest of my life or anything like this. I see this as like a short to mid-term opportunity for us to play around, to grow something, and to be honest, to sell it pretty quickly. I think we'll most likely sell Poststrips within the next like 12 to 18 months. I would be surprised if we didn't. And use this as a learning opportunity and then start to build out potentially our own like mini SaaS, micro SaaS, like holding company or something like this, where we're running multiple different SaaS companies at the same time on a smaller scale. Because I think this is it's attractive for me business wise, just from the potential upside, but also I think it's an interesting challenge that presents itself too. So
because Poststrips also is in the same niche as like basically as your agency marketing,
kind of
in marketing services, and you help grow audiences.
Yeah, kind of. The Poststrips thing was very interesting because like I had a whole list of criteria for the kind of SaaS company that I did want to acquire. And we had been looking and evaluating the market for probably like 6 to 9 months or something like this, and had almost given up on finding something that would fit our criteria. But Poststrips is a funny one because the way that I started Hey Digital, the agency, the way that I like had our first clients come to us and everything else was off the back of my own personal LinkedIn. I spent years, like building out my LinkedIn profile, posting all of the time, being very active here. And that was what enabled me to set up Pay Digital. Was I was working remotely for a SaaS company. I was posting a lot, and I was starting to have a lot more opportunities come to me with like speaking engagements or workshops, or other SaaS companies asking if I could support them with some marketing, like training or whatever else. And I was turning them all away because I was working for like one company. I really liked it. But it reached the point where the inbound volume, it wasn't like crazy, but it was enough for me to be like, okay, it seems kind of dumb to keep turning these away if I just have one like source of income, which is my job, which was very like good and comfortable. And so one day I just made the decision, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to open up. And I posted on LinkedIn. I could probably find the video. Like I posted this stupid video about how I'd like left my job. And immediately because of that video, I landed my first like 2 clients for the agency. And so it's kind of weird now, when we were looking at SaaS companies to acquire, I wasn't considering like, oh, let's find a LinkedIn tool or a social media tool or something like this. But when the opportunity came up, it kind of made a lot of sense just from I think marketing, especially a small micro SaaS, you can really lean into like storytelling a lot. And I think this is such an easy story for us to tell, right? Of like, I'm already thinking of the onboarding emails that we can be sending, the quotes and testimonials that we have on the new website that we're building, and all this stuff is going to be super easy because I can just literally like put my previous story and experience like into everything that we're doing for Post Trips. And I think it like
They definitely sell pretty good right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is cool. I think it's going to be fun.
Is it a good idea for anyone just to jump in and start playing around building a SaaS company if you haven't had, let's say, a success before? Let's say you're just a wage worker.
Yeah.
And now you want to do something. Do you think a SaaS company is something that you can straight go into building if you have some kind of a knowledge mindset, or would a person need like a good backing or good standing or just like some monetary backing before they do that?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to answer because it's like quite a broad question.
Yeah,
it depends on
so much on the person as well, because like most of the people, they have like one dimension of the skill, right? Like they know how to build it or they know how to market. I would say the marketers are probably more successful in building a new SaaS, because like a lot of the engineers, they start it and then they actually think that the product's going to market it themselves, and then it just never takes off.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You build something, but getting the people to actually use it is the most difficult part.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened with Post Trips, right? It's like it existed for maybe a year and a half. It had a functioning product. It's like it wasn't the best in the world, but it was functioning. It was fine. But it doesn't matter if nobody knows that it exists, right? But to answer your question, I don't know, because I think it depends on so many different variables. Because for us now, starting a SaaS company, acquiring a SaaS company, whatever, I don't want to say it's easy because it's like we've just started this, but I'm with 99% conviction that we will be successful with this venture and we'll be able to sell this company for significantly more than we bought and spent on it. But for us, it's easier because like we have, for example, funds available to us now. We have a team available. If I was the like me of 6 years ago, starting a SaaS company back then, it wouldn't have made sense for me because I wouldn't have had the money for the development. I wouldn't have had the money for the marketing, right? I wouldn't have had a team that I could lean on. And like, yes, you can do these things by yourself, but it takes like so much longer.
I kind of wonder if there's any info on this. I would love to know, these co-working spaces and these startup hubs, how many of the founders end up working on some other people's projects, how many first-time founders actually succeed, or like versus the people who have a successful business and then just start a SaaS business as a side gig or an experiment, What's the difference there? What's the parity between those two?
I know it's not easy to say to like, if you were wanting to get started with a business right now, like we basically have said to them, like, you can't do a SaaS. And that's maybe not true. Like there are a lot of people that do this successfully. But in my opinion, I would always focus, if you're first like starting a company for the very first time, trying to find something that cash flows first. Because a SaaS is like, even let's say you spend all this time building it, you spend time marketing, you have users coming on, whatever. If you're at like $500 in monthly recurring revenue, or even like 1,000 or 2,000 or something like this isn't really enough for most people to survive even, right? When it comes to like having a team or anything else and personal expenses and whatever. So I would think like try and find something that can cash flow, even if it's a little bit first. Maybe it's like you do some consulting on the side or something.
I think it was like almost 10 years ago, like when I was running an agency, and then I saw like this model essentially that you start from like a service, then you productize the service, and then eventually you can pivot into a SaaS. Like SaaS would be the third step after we already like basically made money from the agency and have like a fixed product to sell, and then SaaS, because SaaS takes so long to build. I think like it was somewhere in the, or like from someone in the Nathan Barry like group.
The ConvertKit guy, right?
Yeah. Because I remember following him back in the day, and then he was like, I just want to like get it to 5K a month.
Right.
And then he like missed the deadline when he like wanted to hit it, or otherwise he was like gonna quit. And now it's like a 30 million a year business, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's even, I've never had a job. I've never worked for somebody else, never had a wage. I've always been doing my own thing, freelancing and building my own little production companies and businesses and agencies. And I've failed all the previous ones, you know, at some point. Not failed, but kind of disbanded them, because the way I approached building these agencies, I wasn't approaching them as if I want to build a company. I was maximizing my own output, that my own how much it can generate money for me. I wasn't really thinking about growing the collective, growing the company. So it always felt like just creating myself a job, because it was hustling. I was the one hustling, and ultimately it was still stuck behind me how many hours I put in, this is how much you get out, and never actually building a system or business. And now, given enough years, you know, the thinking evolves, a person grows, and now I'm finally thinking about it. Okay, actually, if I prioritize building a company and maybe not siphon all the money out of the company and pay myself the biggest salary and all these things, you know, then you can build something and have a bigger view and longer term view of it.
Yeah, but I think it's hard for a lot of people to have longer term views when you're first starting a company, right? Because it's like you need to survive somehow. It's a really challenging balance, because I remember the first probably two years of running Hey Digital. So my co-founder is Celia, who's my fiance as well, right? And I remember telling her when she first joined me that, hey, look, the first 2 years, at least the first 2 years, to be honest, going to be miserable. We're not going to make any money. The company is going to make money, but we're going to keep all of the money in the company and continue to reinvest it into the team or into marketing or whatever else, and we will just take out the absolute minimum, and we'll do this for 1 to 2 years, and you just have to trust me. To be honest, I don't know where I had this blind faith from or why I felt this way, but I knew hey, you just have to trust me for these couple years. It will be pretty miserable, but then in the next few years it will be so much more worth it. Because I think an issue that many agency owners have too, from my network and people that I speak to, is they are so reliant on their cash flow from their clients, and they don't have any if they lose 3 clients or 40% of their business 1 month for whatever reason, maybe there's some event that happens, right? They're screwed. And because they haven't built up a buffer, they haven't thought about these scenarios. And so we spent the first couple of years just barely taking any money out of the company. And I'm so grateful that we did do that, even though it was kind of it wasn't the most enjoyable time, right?
Mode.
Yeah, it sucked, but now it enables us to, okay, we can, it was a very small acquisition. It's nothing crazy numbers wise, but okay, we can go and buy a small SaaS company, and we can invest in more team members, and we can do these other things, right? So I think this is, sometimes people are thinking too short term, in my opinion, when they're starting a business, but I can also completely understand why they do this. It's hard.
Exactly, as you said, you do need a backing before, what we've alluded to, because my mind shift changed as well when I finally got that backing at some point, you know.
With the SaaS company, it's okay, you could maybe go down the route of trying to raise funding at the very beginning, but it's also if you haven't done this before, it's going to be pretty hard to raise funding, and also I don't know if that's the best idea for your first company either. So yeah, I don't know. I think SaaS is we're probably going to see over the next few years. It's always been a popular space, but I feel SaaS has been more talked about within the kind of B2B scene and everything else, whereas now it's becoming the kind of cool thing. So I'm very curious to see how this happens. I already see on YouTube now and TikTok, wherever else, all these guys that are
TikToks on how to build a SaaS
company. SaaS no code bros and all this kind of stuff.
It could also
right?
be that you're just more so looking into this
maybe.
yourself, so the algorithm is pushing it more.
Maybe. When I started Hey Digital 6 years ago now, no one asked me any questions about why I'm running a SaaS agency, now I just open Twitter and it's like there are so many like 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds that are focused on SaaS as their niche, right? So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves.
I mean, fair enough. It's hot because everyone wants those 10x multiples.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But how is the business doing now? How long ago did you acquire it, and what has the change been, or the timeline, and what are you looking? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah. So as like when we're recording this now, we acquired the company I think like 6 weeks ago or something like this, and it's super small. So when we acquired it, the monthly recurring revenue was literally like $230 a month or something like this. It's very, very tiny. And we haven't really done anything significant with it publicly. Like we took the company over and we've been completely focused on redesigning the whole product, like redesigning the product, redesigning the website, adding in some additional features and functionality. And we've been working on this now for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we have like 3 developers now that are building everything out, and we're hoping that we should be ready to kind of, let's say, relaunch like version 2 of the tool by the very start of August. But this will be like kind of quiet just to the current customers. We'll update the website and everything else. In the last 5-6 weeks, we haven't done any marketing aside from like, I don't know, I just talk about it sometimes. Like, I tweet sometimes. I've written a few things on LinkedIn and that's it. And as of like this morning, the MRR is like 270 or something like this. So it's grown like a tiny amount. The majority of the traffic to the website right now has been coming from some like organic work that the previous guy did. It's nothing like crazy, but they're ranking for, or I should say we're ranking for like a couple of search terms like LinkedIn, video downloader. This drives some traffic, and a couple smaller things like this.
Did you add the sign-up flows to the end of these lead magnets then?
No, not yet. So this is what we're doing in the redesign. Like I'll actually show you after this podcast, because we've like we've changed a lot even since I last.
Oh, and I wanted to know, like, since you now removed the forever trial loophole that I found.
Yeah.
Did you look into it? Was anyone actually using it so far?
No, I don't think so. Like, it's so, I don't know, like I'm not looking at previous data too much with this business, because looking at data is really important. Like at the agency at Hey Digital, every decision that we make is based on data now. It's like we have to do this. But when a company has like PostScripts, maybe it had like 20 paying customers or something like this, there's just no point spending hours going through data and looking at everything. But yeah, so we should be ready to relaunch at the start of August, and then we'll be pushing much harder. Yeah.
Plus, I'm wondering now that you can just input CSVs and just like raw data into the code interpreter of ChatGPT or the Anthropic, and you can ask for correlations, causations, whatever kind of theories for it to shift through your data. Will it make decision making easier, or is it just going to be random gibberish again? Do you have any idea?
Would want to try it, but not super high expectations. I don't think, because like the correlations, it would mean more than just like processing the natural language, right? It's more like running a regression model that is more like machine learning. I think the AI, like the chat interfaces, they're actually not doing this type of work on the data.
Because one thing that it was kind of useful for is when I ran it through Anthropic, our lead magnet list, that it kind of can sort by looking at the position. It can sort when you describe it to what you're doing, what your outreach goal is. When you have a list of like a few thousand people or a few hundred people, because Anthropic can take a lot of context, it can find you the highest, best targeted leads for you by just looking at the job titles and these things and the companies. Because if it has info on the company, then it can find like qualified good matches for you if you just describe it in human language of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I haven't tried, but like maybe it's something we can experiment with. Yeah, I kind of like, I'm very excited to have the new version of the product like live and the new website live, because right now it doesn't really make much sense for us to be pushing aggressively with our marketing, just because we know the current user experience isn't great. Like I don't want to be having people sign up and then them churning very quickly.
Yeah, I saw the redesign and the UX that you have. The new one makes so much more sense. The buttons are so much more intuitive.
Yeah, it's hard though, because it's like we don't want to take too long with something, because we don't want to, I feel like every day when I don't have this live, I'm basically losing money, right? That's how I think about it anyway, because I know
that's
that
the best way to think about not launching a product.
Yeah, but it's also difficult because, as you guys know, like I have no technical experience, right? So when we acquired the company, I had to come to both of you and be like, guys, how do I even like open the code on my computer? I had no clue about how to do anything, right?
And the project wasn't set up in a traditional way, so Kaur had to go like a while at it until he cracked on how to start the development server, and he was just like wouldn't quit, just like kept doing it.
Yeah,
there's like 2 levels of like software for me. Like there's the software written by a single guy, and then it will only be understood that by that single guy that wrote it. Or there's the open source code, which sounds good, so that like you can reuse it, but then the open source code is made so complex that it's actually easier to build it yourself and just like take inspiration.
Yeah, so it's like, so this, I had no technical experience, and neither did anyone on my team really. So this is a whole new learning curve also. Like I'm used to managing performance marketers and like designers and things like this. Managing developers is just new for me. So trying to understand timelines and how we work on this, whilst also not trying to like overdo our product, because there's no point, in my eyes, there's no point spending months and months developing something, launching it and finding out, oh, actually, maybe the market didn't even want this, right? So we're trying to find this balance of, okay, it's been 6 weeks, maybe it's been 4 weeks since we've been actually like starting to build stuff and redesign the website, redesign the product, everything else. I just want to get something live as quickly as possible. So we're looking at this in kind of like phases. And so this first phase is very simple. It's just like the whole product has been redesigned, but the actual functionality is basically exactly the same with a couple of important new features added in. So then I can start like going a little bit more intense with the marketing.
How was the process finding the developers so quick?
The developer that was working on the product, he like previously, basically it was like a one guy company, but he had a friend that was doing some part-time development work on it, and that was the guy who'd like built most of the code. He was comfortable to stay like post transition, so we've been using him for the last few weeks, but just like in the last 1 or 2 weeks I brought on an additional like 2 guys, just because we were facing some like challenges with that guy, to be honest. So yeah, it was pretty easy. And actually the 2 guys that I've brought on to help me now, one of them is a guy that I've known, like he actually did some like small development for us on another project like maybe 4 years ago or something like this.
And once you now, let's say you launch the new version, do a soft launch, how do you plan to market this? What's your go-to market strategy in that sense?
Yeah, so the way that I operate in business is like, I don't know, for some people kind of crazy, I think, or not super prepared, but I don't like analyze everything. I don't build out this huge strategic plan, so I don't have a go-to-market strategy. I just know in my head like this is what we're going to try first and what we're going to do. And so based on what's working currently, like the website is generating some decent-ish traffic considering there's been no effort put into this. They basically spun up 2 pages that are ranking for some keywords, and it's like that's it, there's nothing else. So we were already focusing a lot on the like the SEO and content side of things, and I can go into depth about what we're doing there in a second. But from our perspective with the agency, working with all these different SaaS companies over the last 6 years, SEO and content is always the core pillar of what everyone is doing, but it's not necessarily the thing that drives like revenue immediately. So we know that that's an area where we need to build out straight away. So we're doing that already, and we'll come back to this, I think. And then just personally, like I'm going to be posting about it more on Twitter, on my own LinkedIn. Like this will generate us signups pretty easily, I think, immediately. And then we're focusing attention on, okay, what we do as an agency at Hey Digital is performance marketing. So we're going to run some ads, but we're not going to be like too aggressive with the ads or the ad spend, just because we don't have good data on what the LTV of a client for post strips is right now. And the current pricing model, the way that it is, to be honest, is so cheap. It's like $15 a month is the first price point. It's very difficult when you're bootstrapping a company to make a $15 monthly subscription to make that possible with performance marketing, in my perspective. So we'll probably just have some retargeting and this is it. But we're gonna be spending some money on like partnerships with I guess you would call them like influencers. So some people that have big followings on LinkedIn, we're going to be working with them, some sponsored posts, things like this, sponsoring some newsletters as well. We have some of these lined up already, and that will be it to start with.
It's kind of like a good product in a way, because it's kind of like B2C, but at the same time it's like business owners that are most interested in it.
Yeah.
So the pricing point can definitely be higher.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess the churn is also like a lot less than when it would be like something targeting like a total retail person.
Yeah, I think so.
You are going to add a second tier pricing point.
Yeah,
as well,
so
right?
we have like, there's going to be 2 different pricing tiers for like the initial relaunch, and there's still going to be the pricing will go up from what it is today, but it's still going to be like pretty low price compared to the competition. Because I think at this stage, that's a lever that we can pull on as well. Like, I don't really care what someone pays us. I just want like paying users to get started so we can get more feedback. So we'll put the pricing up a little bit, but nothing crazy. And it's just 2 pricing tiers. But then as we introduce a few more features into like the next phases, we'll probably add in 1 more. So there'll be like three pricing tiers. I think with a SaaS company like this, there are a few other SaaS businesses that do exactly the same thing. When you're running any SaaS company, there's always like a load of competition. But in the LinkedIn like post writing scheduling space, there's one very specific company that's been around for maybe a few years now. They've been very successful. They were acquired, and one of the things about like this build in public kind of space in SaaS is like they followed this. And so to be honest, like we're just looking at what they've done and what was successful for them and replicating a lot of this and then adding in like our own ideas and flavor as well. And I think at this kind of stage with a business like this, you don't need to overcomplicate things. Like if someone has done it, they've been successful, they've shared everything that they've done, I don't see why you wouldn't like follow a very similar strategy. We can differentiate ourselves with the product itself.
Was the sharing before they got acquired, or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think less so
Usually the
now.
SaaS also dies a little bit after the acquisition goes through.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a company called Taplio, so I don't know if you guys know
I heard
what
about
it
that
is.
one. Yeah.
But they're the same parent as like Tweet Hunter, I think they run. Basically, Taplio is like Tweet Hunter, but for LinkedIn. It's the exact same product, just like slightly different colors and stuff.
But when you acquired it, you did have a Twitter API functionality built into the product, right?
Yeah.
But you decided to give up on that
Yeah,
one.
so we decided not to use it just because of the pricing. It's like
How much is the Twitter API? Like 50 grand a year?
they've changed it
It's
now.
either
cheaper again.
100 a month, which you like reach the gap quite quick.
Yeah.
It's like good if you're doing something for yourself a little bit, but then it's like 5K a month now.
Yeah, they've already dropped it. There's a 5K a month option. But I think originally when they first introduced this, the only option was like, I think it was like 82,000 a month or something like this, right? And so we thought, okay, the 5K a month option, that's cool, but I'm not going to pay 5K a month for something when the SaaS company is like a couple $100 in MRR. It makes no sense. Maybe later on we could add Twitter functionality back into the product, but we could have it right now with some like hacky ways of helping people so that they can still schedule their posts on Twitter. But I didn't want to have that in any of our messaging or on our website, because if people are attracted in because of the Twitter like functionality as well, and then once we get to, let's say, like 500 customers, we can't service this anymore, we're going to churn a load of clients, right? So we're just like solely focused on LinkedIn. It's a risk, of course, there's platform risk, but it's fine.
But have either of you used Threads at all? No.
I haven't even made an account.
Yeah, I also couldn't. I couldn't get it on my
I'm
phone.
not downloading an application.
Yeah, we don't have. I don't think we even have it in Norwegian right now, still, right? So that's weird. They wanted to do this like global takeover of Twitter, and you can't download it in Estonia or Europe. I think I would think it's all Europe then.
Yeah, I don't know, because I couldn't download. When everyone was talking about it, I was like, okay, I'll download it, and I went to and I couldn't. So I haven't.
I'm not gonna now anyway either.
Yeah.
But I was wondering.
Because my app store is not in Europe.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm wondering is what the culture there is like. Is that a place as well where you can post business things and grow as a business like Instagram and or Twitter?
I have no. I haven't seen anything.
Well, the meme was that it's like a more friendly version of Twitter in a way. Like no fight videos.
Okay, too bad.
Because it's like personal pages more so, and it's still like the content terms in a way, like no violence.
Because I was thinking the only way that makes sense if you get a Twitter API, if you can at least copy, paste the same tweets into, just push them into Threads as well.
Yeah, when everyone was talking about the Threads thing, someone did say to me like, I wonder if there's some first mover advantage available if you build a tool like we're building Postscripts right now, but for Threads. But there wasn't, like, their API wasn't public, I don't think, so you couldn't build anything. And I'm pleased that I didn't get sucked into this either, because imagine if you were like starting to build like a scheduling tool for Threads, and I don't know, my gut tells me in 6 months time no one will be talking about this, but maybe it will be successful.
Could have made some money building like a $10 a month tool that just takes your old tweets and randomizes them into Threads to grow your audience.
I mean, Gary Vee is all over it, I think, on Threads.
But
he's on every platform. He's just going for it.
It's probably not him, but
Yeah.
If it works, it works.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But your SEO then, let's
Yeah.
get down to the grassroots. What
Yeah.
are you doing with the SEO?
Yeah. So this is kind of funny too, because we have no SEO experience. So I'll just put that out there first to make this super clear. This is not financial advice, right? This is not SEO advice.
This is not search advice.
Yeah. But we, just from understanding SaaS and how it works, SEO is such a core pillar for these businesses. And then from doing our competitive research when we were thinking about acquiring PostScripts, like when we saw what Taplio have done since the acquisition, like since they were acquired, they very clearly focus a lot of time and energy into SEO as well. If you look at their traffic, it's just like increased exponentially over the last few months. So part of our like due diligence process is really just like researching what the competition are doing, how can we model similarly to them. So these are the kind of two reasons why we were looking at doing this. Now for us, what we're starting with is PostScripts already has some okay-ish traffic every month. I think I can't remember exactly, but when I posted on Twitter about last month, I think it was maybe like 3,500-4,000 visits last month or something like this, which for a product that only has like 15-20 paying customers, I think it's pretty good, right? And most of those are coming from there's a couple of specific terms. So one is LinkedIn video downloader, and then one is like LinkedIn chat GPT prompts or something like this, and then there's maybe LinkedIn profile optimizer or something. And so when I looked at the competition also, they're following this same approach where they have a lot of, I guess you could call them like micro tools. So things that people would be searching for help on their LinkedIn profile with. So things like LinkedIn headline writer, LinkedIn profile writer, profile review, like all of these kind of things. So the first thing that we're doing is building out some of these like micro tools. They're not all going to turn into people using PostScripts, because that's one of the challenges right now on the website is if you do go to the LinkedIn video downloader, it's a page, you download the video, and then there's literally like no CTA to even try PostScripts. Yeah, you're not coming back, right? So some of them convert, but like not that many. So that's one of the things we've worked on in the redesign, is making sure that on these pages we have this like CTA and different items like this. But yeah, so first thing we're doing is building out some more micro tools, the video downloader, profile optimizer, headline writer, this kind of stuff. But then in the background, what I'm doing right now is, with the help of like some different AI tools, which we can talk about, and this is probably going to upset like some more old school SEO people, whatever, but like we decided that I want to generate as much traffic from SEO as possible. And if we're going down the old school approach of, hey, let's do like 1 to 2 blog posts every week, it's just not going to move the needle. Like maybe longer term, it might be a better strategy, whatever, but it's not going to make a significant difference to traffic or anything else. So what we've done is I had someone that works with us do like full keyword research, everything else. We've basically built out a list of like 400 different articles that we need to and want to write. So we're focusing on building topical authority within LinkedIn. So they're all different LinkedIn related articles. It could be tips about writing a headline. It could be, honestly, there's so many things in here. It's actually kind of crazy to me how many things people are searching for related to LinkedIn. Everything you can imagine, from tips to examples to all these kind of things. And then, so I had someone on my team do that work, do the research and analyze the 3 or 4 different competitors, all of their pages, analyze search volumes, do all this kind of stuff. And then we decided on, I think it's 380 different posts that we want to write. Then we decided on what the titles of those posts are going to be. And then we decided on what the like target keywords are going to be. And now we're using a couple of different tools. One is called Draft Horse is what we're using. And basically with Draft Horse, you can just upload a CSV file of all of your different target keywords.
That's the podcast software.
Yeah, it used to be a podcast. It was called Swell AI was the podcast software, and they had this feature built in, but now they've spun up like a separate product called Draft Horse, which is that feature but standalone. And so basically you can upload as many as you want, like 300, 10, whatever, and it will, using OpenAI, it will just write the articles for you. They're not perfect by any means. So we've built out a little bit of a system for how we edit those and what we change, how we add things in or whatever. But we don't need to write like 300 perfect high quality articles right now. My approach is we get all of these articles written, we get them pushed onto our website as soon as it's live. They start generating some traffic, and then the ones that are generating traffic, we then go in and improve them. This would be like, again, I'm not some SEO guy, so this could be an awful idea, I don't know, but like
it's a more new strategy. Like
exactly,
like back in the day, this wouldn't have worked, but now it's literally like you can like go back to the article and like keep optimizing
Yes.
it, and it works.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're doing this. This is what we're going to be doing. Like we've got like not all of the articles, but some of them written right now. I haven't done the whole list just because the website hasn't been ready yet, but we're pretty close to having this done. And this draft horse, they just introduced a Webflow integration, and our new website is going to be on Webflow. So I will literally be able to just like send to Webflow. So this is what we're doing SEO wise. We're just going to get a load of these articles out. And the reason I want to do it this way is because it's faster. It's cheaper as well. I'm not comparing the outcome of this SEO to like an actual good quality content writer, because I know that it's different. I know that the outcome is not going to be as good, but like I could maybe pay like 300, 400, 500, maybe even more per article if I work with like a high quality writer, right? Whereas with this, I'm pretty sure for these like 400 articles, I think it's going to have cost me less than like $200 or something like this, right?
And then crazy,
and then I just have one person on my team that's we've built a very simple SOP for like how to add in some different statistics and make sure you find some linking opportunities, and maybe they'll spend like an hour per article or something, or half an hour. But
you can ask these things from the AI as well.
Yes.
Just like paste in the whole article. Hey, I want to include this and this keyword.
Yeah.
Tell me where to add it. I want to add these links. Tell me where to put them.
Yeah.
Look at this sitemap. Tell me if I can put any of these. Like it's gonna look at the URLs.
Yeah,
let's say,
I think I
put them in.
sent it to you also, but there's this other AI tool that I've been using called Perplexity.
Yeah,
and
that's a good search
This
tool.
is really good. Like literally I just input, this is the article title and these are our keywords, and then I say I want to find some relevant statistics that I can link out to, and it will return like 5 different blogs that it's found online, and we just link out to those, and it's like super quick and easy way of doing this.
And you can't do this in BART.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do this in ChatGPT or anything like this.
It's like BART should have the functionality, but it's like so far it's completely useless.
Yeah. So basically I'm just going to like absolutely like go all out on this and see what it does. And then
you could get like an AI person on your team to just do this stuff for you, so you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah,
either.
exactly. And so there's this, and then the other area that we're going to experiment with a little bit is like some sponsored promotions in newsletters and other items. I've never done this before. I don't have too much experience, but we have a friend, Kevin, who's like, this has been very successful for him with his product, and so I want to try this out. And like I already have a few different LinkedIn focused influencers, but also more general like startup business guys that have newsletters. And surprisingly, when you're talking to these people, the range of pricing that they quote you for sponsorships is ridiculous. Like some will be super cheap and some will be asking for like crazy amounts. So it is pretty time consuming finding ones that feel like they make sense. But I was surprised at how it is pretty straightforward to find some people that you could sponsor.
The big ones are like super expensive and like super hard to see a return on it.
Yes, exactly. But like you can get in early enough with some people where they're only charging like a few $100s or something like this for a sponsorship.
That's good.
And so then it's like the risk is minimal. Yeah.
Have you thought about podcasts in a sense that buying an ad spot on a podcast or just doing the appearances to...
Yeah. I'll be honest. Like I used to do a podcast. I think this was one of the ways that we also started Hey Digital, the agency, was like my LinkedIn profile and the podcast. So we had a podcast called the SaaS Marketing Show.
How many episodes did you put out?
I don't know, maybe like 65 or 70 or something like this.
That's a top 1% podcast.
Yeah, well, but I just got so like bored of doing this, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But like it was very valuable for us, which is why everyone always tells me I should like restart this. And maybe I will. Maybe this can be a good time for me to restart this.
You mentioned to me that even years later, when did you quit?
I don't think we've published an episode for like 2.5 years, but we still get sales calls where people say, hey, I found you because of the podcast. So it's like that tells me that I probably should do this still. But
have you also noticed that when people are finding you through your podcast, is it easier to establish the rapport or the relationship with them?
Yeah, and I think this is why we were able to be, in my eyes, like pretty successful with the agency with Hey Digital, is like with no significant experience before this, to be honest, is like when I started, I was just selling to people that knew who I was because of my LinkedIn post and because of the podcast. And so the sales process there is like so much easier than it is. Yeah. Like the sales calls that I do now, it's like our sales still is inbound traffic, but most people now are finding us through like SEO or other things. And so whilst they kind of trust us a little bit, they don't have that same level of trust as the first people that I was selling to, who were honestly as well guests on my podcast. Like that was one of the other, I know people play that a little bit, but like sometimes not too well, but
Yeah. How many views did you average per episode?
So we were actually like more so audio focused, and then I just threw the episodes on YouTube later. I think at one point each episode on audio would do maybe like anywhere from 500-600 to a couple thousand downloads on audio, and then
that is a good amount of downloads, but you don't need that many even for the podcast to pay off, right?
Yeah, and to be honest, like I actually played the podcast thing very well. You'd be proud of me. Like I from day one with the podcast, I also, because I'd built a little bit of an audience on LinkedIn and other places, I decided I was going to do the podcast, but then I decided I didn't want to spend any of my own money on the podcast, so I brought on a sponsor from like basically I think maybe the third episode or something like this, and they paid for like all of the equipment and everything else like this. So
how'd you pull that off?
I mean, it was pretty easy because like at this time podcasts weren't as popular, because
this
would have been
like 3 years ago.
Yeah, 4, maybe even 4 or 5 years ago.
So you ran it for like 2 years almost.
Yeah, and it's like all of my content on LinkedIn was just stuff pulled from the podcast, and so because it was so focused on SaaS, anyone that was selling to people that were interested in SaaS, it was very easy for me to just approach them and say, hey, like I have these followers on LinkedIn, like we're going to do this podcast. It was easy. It was actually, I think they're probably still around, like the live streaming tool Restream. They were my first sponsor for the podcast. And so then they wanted me to, when I was recording, to live stream onto LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere else like this. And so it was super easy.
It's a perpetual ad for them right now, because I don't think you've gone back and deleted
these
things.
No, of course not.
Because they're still running these ads.
Yeah. So actually the podcast was like good for a couple of reasons. Like I got cash flow from it, but also for the agency it was good. So yeah, I think I should, I've known for a long time I should restart this. It's just been very low on the priority list.
Well, I mean, the good idea is also that like you're not exactly like interviewing your own customers already, but you're just like reaching out to someone. Do you want to be on my podcast about SaaS marketing? And then you kind of develop the relationship, and
we
then you
still
can just sell it, right?
Even now, like every week I get emails from like PR companies of like, hey, can we bring our client on your podcast and stuff like this, and these like podcast booking companies and stuff. So I think
I don't trust them.
Yeah, me neither. I don't think I've ever said yes to someone that's come from a company like that, to be honest.
But I did have, when I was launching my book, I mean, the launch failed because of, the story, the marketer ran away with my money. But one good thing they did do is get me on like 2 podcasts. And one of them was with a doctor whose books I had read and whom I respected. And I didn't even know that they were reaching out to him. And I loved that podcast. And that podcast actually has been the most successful marketing move for my book, because I sold the most books from that conversation.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even have a high listenership for his podcast.
Yeah, you don't need to, right? Because it's like if you're in a niche, if you have a super niche podcast, it doesn't matter if only like 10 people are listening to it. If one of those people buys your service or something, then it's sometimes worth it.
And you just build so much trust with it, and it works so well as a sales tool.
Yeah, I think podcasts are great. Like there are so many SaaS companies that are now running their own podcasts, right? It's like I really believe in the podcast and like content off the back of the podcast as well. Like I think the strategy is really important. I just like
transcribing for SEO, creating articles, LinkedIn posts, Twitter posts, like all that.
It makes it a lot easier. I think just for me personally, the last few years of running the agency, it was like we just got so sucked into running the actual business. And if I'm honest, the last thing I wanted to do like 2 years ago or a year ago was then like sit down with some marketer at another company and just listen to them like spiel about what they're doing. Like I don't know, like that. This is where it's interesting. It's like I really care about like our business, and I really care about our clients and the companies that we work with, but also like I'm not sat at home every night getting super pumped up about like a little SaaS marketing strategy, right? So it's like, okay, I can either sit down and listen to someone talk for an hour about how amazing it is that they increase their click-through rate by like 2%, or I can just like relax, So
that's where
like,
you spice it up somehow.
I think that's where I had the issue. Is I just got bored of doing the podcast, to be honest. It was like interviewing so many different people, and it was good for networking for sure, but networking isn't so good if you become like kind of disinterested, and then the podcast isn't good if you're not interested in what you're talking about with the person either. So it just didn't make sense to carry on. But I don't know, I feel like now could be interesting to bring it back. I would actually want to ask you guys, like, I don't know if you have experience with this or not, but like if I just restarted it with the same, like didn't create a new podcast or anything, we just posted to the same one, I wonder if it would pick up again, or if it would be just like dead. I don't know.
I mean, it's certainly easier. There's probably still people subscribed to it.
Yeah, of course, because it was ranking, like I don't know if I search now in the podcast store for SaaS, I don't know what would come up, but it was like anyone that searched for SaaS or SaaS marketing, it was within the first couple podcasts that came up every time.
Yes. If you're doing it now,
Yeah.
what you want to do is definitely start with YouTube again. And on YouTube, the subscribers don't matter that much anymore. So you want to just keep posting on the same account, start it up again, and it's up to chance if it's going to pick up. But I think the first blast is going to go out to people anyway, and if they click on it, if they're interested, they're going to get into it. And for growing the audio version of it, now you need shorts and clips. And the best strategy is as well what we're going to do, like with our podcast after this conversation, we're going to create like shorts of you as well. We're going to clip them out, give them to you for you to share on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter. This way you get content, but people who want to listen to this conversation are going to come back to this podcast to find it. So it's a win-win situation. Yeah. This is how you grow it.
I think that was the issue that I was having before too. It's like I was running the podcast myself with no help from anyone, and I was trying to build the agency, and it's like
just editing the videos and putting them out and creating clips and articles. Yeah, and that's not a job for the CEO.
You know me. It's like, I don't know how to do this kind of stuff. Like I'm pretty sure I was just taking the videos and the audio recordings, putting them into Descript. And this was when Descript was like super early, right? Yeah. And I would just like right click and like remove any filler words or something. And then I would like add a picture to the front and the end and then just schedule this. But the quality's not good with this, right? But I think then it was fine. Whereas now, if I like did the SaaS show again now, and I didn't have any, like, I didn't step up the quality of the content, then I don't think it would have anywhere near
more
the
saturated.
Success.
The market is way more saturated.
Right.
But imagine if you had a team, then how big it might have been.
Yeah, exactly. I think like if I had the desire or like the want or even just the resources, or I like worked with you guys for the podcast, for example, if I restarted the podcast and I did something like what you guys are doing, like then I know it would be like successful. It's just like figuring out what the priorities are for people, right? It's like, yeah, because I think that's the way now with the podcast that you have to, the way you're going to stand out is by like either really good guests that you have on the show or by like the quality of the content. But like you said, most people, you have to attract them to the podcast first, right? And that's what you need these like clips and shorts and other things for. And I just have no skill, knowledge, or appetite to do that myself.
So this is something that I've noticed on Twitter as well. Some Twitter guys, and I don't know if it's true or not, or if they're just tooting their own horn, but supposedly they found an Facebook ad set up some way that is like positive return on, not okay, the stupid way to say it, but they make more money than they pay on ads, because that's how it's supposed to work. I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, they just like have a very good setup for growing the audience, and it just makes so much sense with Facebook ads somehow. And I don't know how that's supposed to work, but something to figure out perhaps. It's just like how to start posting Facebook ads and how to make return and how to grow subscribers from there. Because for the audio platform only, for YouTube you have to trust the algorithm. You have to put on valuable content and it's going to grow. There's no point in trying to game the algorithm. But because discoverability for podcasts on those platforms themselves are so bad, you need to find some sort of like a method, or let's say a workaround or a way how you can start actually growing on them. And you can put out clips, you can put out videos, you can share the content like this as we were talking about, but just finding little new things. Perhaps maybe the ad thing is going to work somehow, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not tried, but maybe we'll need to research this a little bit more, because with ads, I wonder where you would send the traffic, right? Because it's like you need to send the traffic to a domain that you own. You can't just send the traffic to
not an Apple Podcast link either, right?
That's what I thought. So I wonder how this is working. Maybe we could.
Because you saw the same post, right?
Yeah, because I saw the post and he was saying that he was getting like subscribers for the podcast for like $1 or something like this, right? Yeah, I wonder how, because I think he was saying...
But if those subscribers are actually people who are then interested and keep coming back, that's another thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works. Maybe we should take a look and...
Just message him.
Yeah.
But that seems to be a secret strategy.
Yeah, I know who the guy is, but I wonder how it works, because I know that you can't send ads straight into... Like, you couldn't send Facebook traffic into an Apple podcast or a Spotify podcast.
You used to be able to do that, but I'm not sure. But it's probably quite easy to check, right? Because like the ads are public and you can probably reverse engineer what the podcast is.
Another
if
thing
they're even hiding it.
Because we are recording this episode pre-podcast launch, right? And when I launched my own podcast in Estonian, I chose my region as Estonia, but I launched a podcast in English about health topics. That was my own personal podcast, Into the Sea of Dead podcasts that all have 3-4 episodes. I had my contribution to that. But the thing is that when I released it, I was top 1 podcast with my first episodes in Estonian charts for like 2 weeks. So every time somebody opened the Estonian podcast app, I was there at the top. So I think maybe it's like fun picking strange regions or like small regions where people don't post podcasts usually. Maybe we should launch this one into the Estonian region as well.
I wonder if that limits growth in like other regions or no?
Does it?
I don't know.
Could it?
Because I know my last one, the SaaS podcast, was launched on I think it was the English one, because it was when I was traveling. So I must have had like the English app store or something like this. But I used to have one of those like emails that it sends you every week where it tells you like all the different countries where it's ranking, right? So I wonder if there's any limitation of if you post in another country, whether it then doesn't push it as much in the UK or the US or
I think it probably actually doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It's more because like your followers were in Estonia, so that's why you ranked in the Estonian top. But like if
Fair
you
enough.
publish a podcast, then it's gonna rank for every country separately anyway,
enough.
right?
Because I guess I had enough lurkers, because when I post something, because I advertised it on Instagram, and when I post something on Instagram, nowadays you don't get much likes anyway. But the amount of listens and downloads I was getting after it shot up, I guess I have a lot of lurkers who are just interested in what I'm up to. And then just more people kept downloading it because it was in the top of the Apple podcasts. But this is something that we as a podcast studio definitely have to look into as well, because we're mostly focused on YouTube right now. But how the RSS feeds actually work, and all the metrics are notoriously bad. So shifting through them, making sense there, of how many downloads you actually have, of how well it's actually doing, of how much you can trust the top charts, if it's not something like Spotify who control their own like flow, So this is the wild west in that sense.
We definitely noticed with another podcast before that like the downloads that it showed on like the download trackers, I can't remember the products, but like they were like so off, like so much less than actually, plus like the delays on the data and everything, it just like made no sense.
Yeah, I found this even when I had the podcast a few years ago, is like those numbers would change so significantly. They would fluctuate a lot too, of like maybe the podcast hosting tool that I was using like would say the numbers are X, and then if you look back in like 3 months time, sometimes the numbers could have like dramatically reduced even in some cases, or increased. So I used to like try and stop looking at the download numbers after a while, because it's like people get so hooked on them, but also I don't know how believable they were at this time also.
Because you have so many layers. You have, let's say, something like a hosting service, like a Libsyn, where you put it and publish it from the publishing service aggregator. Then you have the Apple Podcast Store where you push it, and then you have these other podcast apps where people listen it from, and then you have the RSS feed and everything else. And like podcasts that you subscribe to on your phone. Let's say you have an iPhone with like 500 gigs or a terabyte of memory, and you subscribe to some podcasts, but I bet you have a bunch of episodes downloaded that you haven't listened to anyway. So, okay, podcast downloads as an audio thing are more valuable than YouTube views anyway in general. But a lot of people who have podcasts downloaded don't end up listening to them. And looking at the listening metrics on Apple Podcasts is again a total mess. You cannot make anything out, and all the numbers are completely mismatched. So there is room on the market definitely for a podcast, let's say, analytics tool that actually makes sense.
Shouldn't be this hard.
It should not be this hard.
But I guess like the centralized services handle the downloads separately, and then the data gets really murky at the end.
That's what I think. It makes sense to look at YouTube first in that sense. Okay, there's a lot of people coming from audio anyway. You can know the rough numbers, but going by YouTube, which has a discovery algorithm as well, makes so much more sense. But again, we were looking at this. Some of these services in the US that charge like 30 grand a month from you to create a podcast and put out like 2 to 4 episodes. And they work with some like big companies, and the episodes on YouTube, they had like 100 views, 200 views, and that was it, because they're not any good in video. And you really have to put effort into making good video if you want to stand out and actually succeed on YouTube, because the expectation is there. Takeaway is nowadays, if you want to have success with a podcast and have discovery, go YouTube and make a video as well, because you definitely need the video, plus clips, plus other things and everything you can get from that. But quickly, before we start wrapping up, because I think an hour is already passed, let's talk about the outbound sales, because we had to circle back to the sales. So you said you were doing outbound sales for the Hey Digital and everything. Take us through your process on how you approach this usually.
Yeah, maybe I overstated that a little bit, because like my experience with outbound sales is actually pretty minimal with Hey Digital. Like before starting Hey Digital, I was working in a couple different SaaS companies, and before that I worked in sales. So I do have a lot of personal experience with like outbound emails and calls and everything else. With Hey Digital, we actually like built the business off the back of inbound. So off of my LinkedIn audience and then the podcast and a couple other things like this. We've actually done very little outbound emailing. We've tried it on 2 separate occasions. One was maybe like 6 months into starting the agency. I had a friend that was running a small like email outbound service, and so we just worked with him and he did some emails for us, and that generated us like maybe 1 or 2 clients or something like this. So it was a positive outcome, but the clients that came from those email campaigns actually turned out to be like not the best clients. They didn't stick around for too long. I have hypothesis about like why that might be, but also the data is very minimal. I shouldn't really base too many decisions off 1 or 2 clients. And then we revisited outbound emails. I don't know when this was, maybe 6 months ago or something like this, on a smaller scale. And I just ran it myself. And I think we maybe sent emails to maybe like 2,000 different people or 1,500 different people, something like this. So not huge again. And I think the nature of our business and the kind of clients that we work with is like, we're not going to be able to send emails to like 20,000 people every single month, because there's not enough people in our space to do this. And then also CMOs and VPs of marketing at SaaS companies are getting hammered by cold emails literally all the time. So I don't think it's as effective for us as it could be for some other agencies. But our experience with it, the like last time we did it, was also pretty good. Like we actually signed one of the, I think it's like the largest retainer we've ever signed as a result of it came from a client from cold emails. But I don't know, I think for us, I see cold emails when we run this, we don't run it all the time. Maybe I should look at running it all the time, but when we have done it, it's been like, we've been in a spot where we just need some additional clients, and so we start running emails. We know that it might take us like a month to even see the returns sometimes from cold emails, and yeah, it's been fine for us. But I don't have like some super interesting complex process for how we do it. We were just using Apollo for list building, and then sending emails with instantly, and I didn't really put too much effort into the email copy or anything like this, just because I think for VPs and CMOs at SaaS companies, like if they're going to respond to a cold email about a marketing service, I think the only reason they're going to respond to that email is if they've literally been looking for an agency, or they've had someone on their team quit and it's been within the last like week or 2 weeks or something. So it's like we're truly hoping that we hit someone at the right time. And so from my perspective, the quality of the email and everything else doesn't really matter too much, because we were just very heavy on the social proof of like, we've worked with like all of these great companies.
That's what they say. It's a numbers game, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You just gotta keep spamming every month the same people, and eventually someone's gonna need it.
Yeah, I think for other people, for other agencies, it's different. Like for you guys or other people who have like a larger
niche product,
either a niche product or like a larger pool of people that they can send emails to, or people that aren't like, I don't know. I feel like the VP of marketing or CMO of marketing at a SaaS company, I feel like the volume of cold emails they get every day versus, let's say, a podcast creator or an author, or I don't know, someone that runs a local business, is significantly different. Like SaaS companies are getting hammered every day by so many cold emails.
I wasn't even expecting people to open when we first started, because like when I would get an email, I would just like immediately ignore this and like not even open it. But yeah, it's quite surprising. Like one strategy that could actually work for Hey was that people look at essentially like job offerings.
Yeah.
And if someone's looking for a PPC marketer, then you just like outreach to those ones.
Yeah, I think we've tried this before too, because in Apollo you have this like category filter too, where you can pull this info if they've been recently hiring, or we use like recently fundraising and expanding headcount in marketing, things like this. So I feel like for a lot of agencies or a lot of businesses in general, cold email and outbound email is a great idea and a great channel. Just for us, it's like I would rather focus our energy on some of our inbound channels that are a little bit more like sustainable, I think, longer
Well,
term.
the trick is actually that you put a notification on like LinkedIn jobs or like some other job like boards. Whenever a new like PPC ad for like a position gets put up, so you're basically immediately reaching out to them in the same day that it like gets posted, and that's when you see the ROI, and you don't even actually need to. Because I've noticed that like Apollo isn't actually that fast in updating the data, so the data is not that good.
Yeah, this makes sense. Like,
When we were doing our first outbound campaign as well, we had a lot of success, like a lot of answers with that, but the product wasn't there. The product wasn't right from our part. I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about. So this is a perfect time to wrap up. Listen, do you have any asks for our audience then? Like the classic podcast ending, any asks, anywhere to try the traffic?
No, I have nothing to sell.
If somebody wants you to be their mentor, reach out to you.
I have
Are you writing a
sell.
book or something?
Nothing to sell to anyone. No, I don't think so. Like, if anyone wants to talk to me, they can find me. It's pretty easy.
Follow Dylan on Twitter, Dylan Hay, and that was at Dylan Hay, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
At Dylan Hay, and subscribe to Post Trips.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
Dylan.
Thanks, guys.
Need to work on our outros.
Yes. That's the pod.
Yeah.